While preparing for her wedding, my daughter stated coldly, "My in-laws have real status. You're just a retired engineer, don't show up." I stayed silent. This wedding, my bank account, my right to cancel. It was time to teach her a lesson. There are things money can never buy, and she was about to learn it in a way she would never forget for the rest of her life. I'm glad you're here with me. Before we go any further, pause for a moment and leave a comment. Where are you listening from, and what time is it there? Your presence matters more than you might think. One small note before we continue this story includes fictionalized details designed to support the narrative and its lessons. Any similarities to real-life people or places are coincidental, but the meaning behind the story is worth hearing. My daughter told me my entire life's work was worthless. She didn't say it outright, not at first. But the words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire you can't quite locate. I'm Richard Coleman, 71 years old, and I spent over 4 decades building things that mattered. Bridges that carried thousands of commuters across the Willamette River every morning. Office complexes in downtown Portland that changed skylines. A wastewater treatment facility in Beaverton that served 500,000 people. I didn't build monuments to ego. I built foundations, infrastructure, the kind of work that outlasts you. Catherine used to say I had a gift for seeing what wasn't there yet. You look at empty lots and see futures. She'd tell me usually, while I was hunched over blueprints at our kitchen table. She was right. I could visualize load-bearing walls, stress points the way water would flow or traffic would move. I understood physics and materials and time. I thought I understood people too. The house where I sat that afternoon was one of my proudest achievements. I designed it myself 35 years ago, right after Catherine and I bought the lot in Lake Oswego. It's a modest 2-story craftsman with cedar shakes and a wraparound porch. Every joist, every window placement, every gentle slope of the roof, I drew it all by hand. Catherine picked the colors: soft sage for the kitchen, warm cream for the living room, pale blue for what would become Victoria's bedroom. Our daughter grew up here. She took her first steps on these oak floors. She learned to ride her bike in the driveway I poured Catherine, running alongside her, both of them laughing. On summer evenings, we'd sit on that porch, and Catherine would read to Victoria from whatever book they were working through. Charlotte's Web, Bridge to Terabithia, Anne of Green Gables. What you build with your hands and your heart lasts forever, Catherine used to tell Victoria. I can still hear her voice saying it, patient and certain. Catherine taught English at Lincoln High School for 30 years. She understood the architecture of stories, the way I understood the architecture of buildings, how they needed strong bones to hold up, how every element had to support the weight of what came next. She died 4 years ago. Cancer. Victoria was 24, just finishing grad school at University of Washington. I was 67 and suddenly alone in the house I'd built for 3. So when Victoria called last month to say she was coming home with big news, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Maybe she'd met someone. Maybe she was moving back to Portland. Maybe the house would feel full again. Victoria arrived on a Saturday in early September, one of those perfect Pacific Northwest afternoons where the light turns golden and the air smells like cedar. She pulled up in a Tesla, not hers, I learned later, and I met her on the porch. She looked beautiful. She's always looked like Catherine, same dark hair, same green eyes, same smile that could convince you of anything. "Hey, Dad," she said, and hugged me. She smelled like expensive perfume. "Hey, kiddo." I held her a beat longer than she wanted. "Come in. I made iced tea." We sat in the living room. She perched on the edge of Catherine's favorite armchair, and I took the couch across from her. "So," I said. "Big news." Her smile was bright rehearsed. "I'm engaged." My heart lifted. "In Victoria? That's wonderful. When do I get to meet him?" "Soon. His name is Garrett Caldwell. We met at a charity gala in Seattle. His family is from Denver originally, but they have property here in Portland, in Dunthorpe. Dunthorpe. The old money enclave where estates have gates and names instead of addresses." I nodded. "Sounds impressive." "It is." She leaned forward. "Garrett's father is in commercial real estate. His mother does philanthropy work. They're the kind of people who matter, you know." I didn't know, but I smiled anyway. "And he makes you happy?" "Of course." She said it too quickly. "We're planning the wedding for next month, October 12th. "Next month? That's fast." "When you know, you know." Another rehearsed line. "Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about logistics." The air started to change. I'm trained to sense structural instability, and I felt it then, a shift, a crack forming. "What kind of logistics?" Victoria tucked her hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture I recognized from childhood. "Well, Garrett and I have been talking about where we'll live after the wedding. His family has several properties, beautiful properties, and this house." She gestured around the room at the built-in bookshelves I'd crafted, at the fireplace I'd laid stone by stone. "It's lovely, obviously, but it's kind of just sitting here, taking up space. Every structure has a load limit, the point at which it can't bear any more weight. Engineers spend their careers calculating these limits, building in safety margins. I'd just found mine." "Taking up space," I repeated. "The Caldwells have a much better property. One of their places has a guest house bigger than this. And honestly, Dad, maintaining this place at your age, wouldn't it be easier to downsize? We could sell it, get you into a nice condo somewhere. Your mother and I built this house." "I know, but you grew up here." "Dad, I'm not saying it doesn't have sentimental value. I'm just saying it's not practical. The Caldwells have real assets, real property. This is just a house. Just a house." The words landed like wrecking balls. Catherine's house. Victoria's childhood home. The place where I'd held my wife while she died, where I'd taught my daughter to measure twice and cut once. Just a house. I looked at Victoria, really looked at her, and saw someone I didn't recognize. The girl who used to help me in the garage, who'd hand me tools and ask questions about why buildings stayed up, that girl was gone. In her place sat a stranger in expensive clothes, talking about assets and property, as if 35 years of life could be reduced to square footage and market comparables. But I'm an engineer. We're practical people. We assess, we calculate, we adapt. And sitting there in my living room, I realized I was about to embark on the most important project of my life. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to design something that would last longer than any bridge, any building, any blueprint I'd ever drawn. Earlier that morning, before Victoria dropped her bombshell about the house, we'd had a different conversation. One that should have warned me what was coming. The meeting started innocently enough. Victoria had texted the night before. "Dad, can Garrett and I come by tomorrow morning? We want to go over wedding details." I'd been up since 6, brewing coffee, straightening throw pillows, nervous as a teenager. My daughter was bringing her fiancé home. They arrived at 9 sharp. Garrett Caldwell stepped out of that Tesla, first tall, mid-30s, pressed khakis, and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. His handshake was firm but brief. "Mr. Coleman, it's an honor to finally meet you. Call me Richard. Please come in." Victoria followed, carrying a 3-ring binder thick as a phone book. She dressed carefully, cream sweater, tailored pants, pearl earrings that had belonged to Catherine. We settled in the living room. Victoria opened the binder on the coffee table with the reverence of someone unveiling architectural plans. "So, Dad, we wanted to walk you through everything. Garrett's mother helped us put this together." On my laptop, a Zoom window flickered to life. A woman's face appeared, sharp features, perfectly highlighted hair. "Mr. Coleman, I'm Adrienne Sinclair. I'll be orchestrating Victoria and Garrett's special day." Her voice had that smooth, expensive quality of someone used to asking for money. "I've been planning luxury weddings in the Portland area for 20 years. I nodded at the screen, already feeling outmatched. Orchestrating, luxury. These weren't words Catherine and I had used. We'd gotten married at a small church in Selwood, had a reception in a friend's backyard. The whole thing cost $3,000. "Let's start with the venue," Victoria said. "We've booked the Abernethy Center in Oregon City." "Beautiful choice," Adrienne chimed in. "Historic mansions, stunning gardens, views of the Willamette. $28,000 for the venue rental." Victoria continued, her finger tracing down a spreadsheet. She wasn't looking at me. 28,000. I kept my face neutral and nodded. "Florals are next." She flipped a page. "We're using Portland's premier florist. Roses, peonies, orchids. 32,000. The numbers kept coming. Photography and videography, 22,000. Custom bridal gown, 18,000. Catering for 200 guests at $650 per plate, 130,000. Live band, 25,000. Lighting and decor, 35,000. Adrienne's fee, 30,000. I sat there, coffee growing cold, watching Victoria tick through items like a grocery list. Garrett said almost nothing, just nodded along, occasionally glancing at his phone. When he did speak, it was brief. "It's important to my parents, Mr. Coleman. My mother has certain expectations." His parents, not him, not Victoria. I'd spent 42 years calculating load capacities and cost analyses. I'd built a 12-story office complex in downtown Portland, where every beam had to be justified and budgeted. That building cost $8 million and housed 300 people every day. This wedding cost more per square foot than that building. For flowers that would wilt, food that would be eaten, music that would fade. "So the total," Victoria said, reaching the final page, "comes to $320,000. Adrienne beamed from the laptop. Garrett studied his cuticles. Victoria finally looked at me, and in her eyes I saw expectation. She expected me to say yes. This wasn't a request. "Victoria, that's more than most people make in 3 years." "I know." Her smile was patient. "But the Caldwells expect a certain standard, Dad. Garrett's sister's wedding was featured in Portland Monthly. This needs to be appropriate." Appropriate. The same word she'd use later when dismissing her mother's wedding dress. I looked at Garrett. "And this is what you want to..." He cleared his throat. "My family values tradition, sir. Making the right impression." Not an answer. I'd asked what he wanted, and he'd told me what his family valued. In 40 years of negotiating with contractors and city planners, I'd learned to hear what people weren't saying. Garrett Caldwell wasn't saying much at all. I looked at Victoria and saw someone I didn't recognize. The girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, who'd helped me build a birdhouse when she was 8. Where had that girl gone? When had my daughter become someone who thought love required a price tag of $320,000? Should have said no right then. Should have told her Catherine and I had built our entire marriage on something that cost less than her floral budget. Should have asked when status became more important than substance. But I didn't. Because she was my daughter. Because I wanted her to be happy. Because some part of me hoped this was just wedding jitters, just the influence of a family I hadn't met yet. All right, I heard myself say. We'll make it work. Victoria's face lit up genuine happiness finally, and she came around the coffee table to hug me. Thank you, Dad. This is going to be perfect. I held her and thought about how structures fail, not all at once, slowly over time from weight they were never designed to carry. That same Saturday afternoon, after the wedding budget meeting, Victoria dropped the second bomb. Garrett had left first, murmuring something about a conference call with his father. The Tesla pulled away, and I'd started gathering coffee mugs when Victoria's voice stopped me. Dad, can we talk for a minute? Something in her tone made me set the mugs down. She was still sitting in Catherine's chair, leaning forward, hands clasped. The posture of someone about to say something difficult. Of course. I sat back down. She took a breath. Garrett and I have been talking about our life after the wedding. Where we'll live. That's smart. Planning ahead. Right. And the thing is, she paused. Dad, we think it might be time to sell this house. The words didn't land right away. They hung in the air like something I could see but couldn't quite touch. Sell this house. It's just so big for one person. And the maintenance, Dad, when was the last time you had the roof inspected? At your age, you shouldn't have to worry about all that. I'm 71, not 90. I know, but Garrett's family has properties we could use. Their place in Dunthorpe has a guest house bigger than most condos. Or they have a home in Cherry Hills Village in Denver. Beautiful area, very safe, close to excellent health care. Properties. Plural. Not home. Not the place where her mother had painted these kitchen walls sage green because it reminded her of spring. Not where we'd marked Victoria's height on the doorframe every birthday. Heck, this house isn't about square footage, Victoria. I know it has sentimental value, but Dad, practically speaking, it doesn't make sense. You're here alone. The Caldwells have resources, real assets that could take care of you properly. Real assets. I designed this house on graph paper at our kitchen table, Catherine reading over my shoulder. Make sure Victoria's room gets morning sun, she'd said. Kids need light to wake up happy. I'd moved the entire floor plan around for that request. I'd poured this driveway myself one August weekend, my brother helping me level the concrete. Catherine had brought us lemonade, and when it was done, she'd walked out barefoot and pressed her handprint into the corner. So we're part of it forever, she'd said. When did you stop seeing this as home? I asked. Victoria blinked. What? This house. When did it become just a property to you? Dad, I'm not saying it's not special. I'm saying it's not practical for where you are in your life. I don't care what the Caldwells have. The sharpness in my voice surprised us both. Victoria sat back, hurt flashing across her face. I'm thinking about your future. Our future. Garrett and I are building something, and we want you to be part of it. But this house, Dad, it's just taking up space. Just taking up space. Like the 40 years Catherine and I spent here were nothing more than wasted real estate. I thought about the afternoon Victoria learned to ride her bike. She'd been 6, all determination, and scraped knees. We'd come out to this driveway, and I'd held the back of her seat while she pedaled. "Don't let go, Daddy." "I won't, baby. I've got you." But eventually, you have to let go. That's what parenting is. I'd run alongside her, one hand on the seat, and then I'd released it. She'd wobbled, shrieked, and then, miracle, she'd found her balance. She'd ridden all the way to the end of the driveway, turned around, face bright with triumph. "I did it. Daddy, did you see?" Catherine had been crying on the porch, hand over her mouth. Happy tears. Proud tears. Afterward, we'd driven to Salt and Straw for ice cream. It became our tradition. Whenever Victoria accomplished something hard, we'd go for ice cream. First day of school. First A on a test. Piano recitals. Science fair projects. High school graduation. The last time we'd gone was 4 years ago, a week before Catherine died. The 3 of us had sat in that tiny shop on Alberta Street pretending everything was normal. Catherine had ordered honey lavender. Victoria got salted caramel. I had chocolate, same as always. We'd sat there eating ice cream and lying to each other with smiles, all of us knowing Catherine had weeks left, not months. "This house isn't just wood and nails," I said, now hearing Catherine's voice. She'd said that to me once when I'd gotten frustrated over a plumbing issue. "It's our foundation, Rich. It holds us all up." Victoria stood. "Dad, I'm trying to help you. I don't need the Caldwells to provide anything. You're being stubborn. I'm being practical. This is my home. Your mother and I built it. You grew up here. Those things don't stop mattering just because there's a bigger guest house in Dunthorpe." She grabbed her purse. "I should go, Victoria. I'll call you later. Think about what I said. Really think about it." She left before I could answer. I stood at the window and watched the Tesla pull away. Garrett had been waiting in the driveway this whole time and felt something crack inside my chest. Not break. Not yet. Just crack. The first small fissure that, if ignored, spreads until the whole structure comes down. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels heavy. I walked through the rooms, slowly. The kitchen where Catherine had taught Victoria to make pancakes. The living room where we'd spent Christmas mornings. The staircase where we'd taken 1,000 photos. At the top of the stairs, I paused at Victoria's old bedroom door. Same pale blue walls. Same bookshelf filled with her childhood favorites. Same window that caught morning sun just like Catherine had wanted. Damage doesn't happen overnight. It starts small, a hairline fracture, a loose connection, something that shifts just slightly. You don't notice it at first. And then one day, you do. I went back downstairs as afternoon light slanted through the windows, turning everything golden. The house felt emptier than it ever had, even in the 4 years since Catherine died. But empty wasn't the same as broken. Not yet. Monday morning, I did what any engineer would do. When facing an unstable situation, I analyzed the data. I'd spent Sunday alone in the house, Catherine's absence feeling sharper than usual. Victoria hadn't called. I hadn't expected her to. So I sat in my home office, a converted bedroom upstairs with a view of the backyard, and opened my laptop. If my daughter wanted to treat our relationship like a business transaction, then I'd approach it the same way. I pulled up my credit card statement. Victoria had been an authorized user since college, a practical decision Catherine and I had made for emergencies. Gas, textbooks, a car repair. We'd trusted her to be responsible, and for years she had been. The monthly statement rarely showed more than $100 in her charges. This month was different. I scrolled through the list, and my chest tightened with each line item. These weren't emergencies. These were charges from months ago hidden in plain sight. Because I'd stopped checking statements closely after Catherine died. The first charge was from 2 months back, $12,000 to Skyline Rooftop Venue in Portland. I clicked on it. An event space downtown. High-end. I grabbed my phone and dialed Victoria. "Dad, I'm at work. This won't take long. Can you tell me about a $12,000 charge to Skyline Rooftop?" Silence. Then what? 2 months ago. Skyline Rooftop Venue, $12,000 on my card. Oh, that was the engagement party. The engagement party. I kept my tone neutral. The small gathering you mentioned. It wasn't that small. We had about 100 people. 100 people. At a rooftop venue in downtown Portland. I hadn't been invited. I see. And you didn't think to mention this charge. Dad, we talked about this. Wedding expenses. You said you'd help. We talked about the wedding, not an engagement party I wasn't invited to. It was mostly Garrett's family and their friends. You would have been bored. I moved to the next charge. $14,000 to Las Vegas luxury travel. Bachelorette package. That's just the deposit for my trip next week. Las Vegas. $14,000. It's not just for me, Dad. I'm covering costs for my bridesmaids. The Caldwell women expect a certain standard. Right. I scrolled further. Nordstrom men's. Custom suits. $5,500. A pause. Those are for Garrett. For Garrett. I'm buying your fiancé's wedding suits. His groomsmen suits, actually. There are 4 of them. Without asking me first. Her voice hardened. Are we really going to nickel and dime everything? I'm not nickel and diming. I'm trying to understand why you've spent over $60,000 on my credit card without telling me. $60,000. She sounded genuinely surprised. Pumpkin Ridge Golf Club, $3,200 for a private event. That was Garrett's bachelor party. His father suggested, I don't care what his father suggested. My voice came out sharper than intended. And then there's the $28,000 deposit for a resort in Bora Bora. That's our honeymoon. I can see that. What I can't see is when you plan to ask my permission. Dad, these are wedding expenses. You said you'd pay for my wedding. No, Victoria. These are things you charged because you knew I'd say no if you asked first. Silence, long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then, I knew you wouldn't understand. You're right. I don't understand. Help me understand why my daughter thinks it's acceptable to take $62,700 without asking. Because you would have said no. Her voice cracked. You would have told me it was too much, that we should scale back, that the Caldwell's expectations don't matter. But they do matter, Dad. They matter to me. And what about what matters to me? You said you'd pay for my wedding. You promised. I promised to pay for a wedding, Victoria, not a coronation. Not a performance for people who care more about appearances than about you. That's not fair. What's not fair is being treated like an ATM instead of a father. She hung up. I set my phone down and stared at the computer screen. $62,700 in unauthorized charges. On top of the $320,000 wedding budget. Nearly $400,000 total, and Victoria acted like I was being unreasonable. I thought about the office building I'd designed in Beaverton back in the 90s. The client had tried to cut corners on the rebar specifications, wanted to save $15,000. I told him no. Structural integrity wasn't negotiable. You couldn't build something meant to last on compromises. The building was still standing 25 years later, but Victoria's wedding, her new life with the Caldwells, this was built entirely on compromises, on appearances, on the thinking that if something costs more, it must be worth more. Catherine would have known what to say. She'd always been better at reaching Victoria's heart, while I focused on the practical aspects. You build the structure, she used to tell me. I'll make sure it feels like home. But Catherine was gone, and without her, I was just a man with blueprints and no one to explain them to. I looked at the statement again. These weren't just numbers. They were choices. Victoria had chosen to spend my money without asking, had chosen to prioritize the Caldwells' expectations over our relationship. Engineers apply increasing pressure to structures to find breaking points. Every material has one. Every relationship, too. I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of my office. Outside, Oregon rain pattered against the windows. The house creaked, settling into itself. Something was going to break. I could feel it the way I'd learned over 4 decades to sense when weight and tension were approaching their limits. I just didn't know yet if it would be her or me or whatever was left of us. That Monday evening, I couldn't let it go. I went deeper. After Victoria hung up on me, I sat at my desk staring at that $12,000 charge. An engagement party I hadn't been invited to. 100 guests celebrating my daughter's future, while I sat home alone, completely unaware. I clicked on the transaction details. Most credit card charges just show the merchant name and total, but sometimes you can find itemized receipts. I logged into the vendor portal, entered the confirmation number, and waited. There it was, the full breakdown. Skyline rooftop venue rental for 100 guests, $4,500. Premium bar package with top-shelf liquor, $3,200. Past hors d'oeuvres, seared ahi tuna truffle mac and cheese bites, $2,800. DJ and theatrical lighting, $1,500. $12,000. For a party that lasted maybe 3 hours. $100 per guest for appetizers and drinks. Catherine and I had hosted Victoria's high school graduation party in our backyard. Grilled burgers, potato salad, folding tables from the church. 50 people, $300 total. Victoria had glowed all afternoon, and Catherine had taken so many pictures the camera battery died. But that hadn't been good enough for the Caldwells. I tried to remember what Victoria had told me about the engagement party. July, right after they'd gotten engaged. She'd called me excited. "Me Dad Garrett's parents want to throw us an engagement party. Just a small thing with some family friends. Nothing formal." "That's nice of them. When is it?" "Next Saturday. It's just going to be casual, really low-key." Low-key. $12,000. 100 people at a rooftop venue downtown. "Will I get to meet Garrett's parents?" I'd asked. A pause. "It's actually going to be mostly their friend's dad. Business associates' family from Denver. You'd probably be bored. But we'll do something just us soon, okay?" I'd believed her. I'd been so relieved she was happy that I hadn't questioned it. But now I understood. It hadn't been about me being bored. It had been about me not fitting in. The retired civil engineer from Lake Oswego wouldn't have matched whatever world the Caldwells inhabited. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Howard Scott. Howard and I went back 30 years. We'd met when I was designing a credit union building, and he was a junior loan officer. Now he was a regional manager downtown. More importantly, he was someone who understood how money moved in this city. He answered on the second ring. "Rich, everything okay?" "Howard, I need to talk through something." "You got a minute?" "For you always." "What's going on?" "Victoria charged $12,000 to my card back in July. Engagement party at Skyline Rooftop. 100 people. I wasn't invited." Silence. Then, "Jesus, Rich, I'm sorry." "That's not why I'm calling." I pulled the itemized receipt. $4,500 for the venue, $3,200 for premium bar, $2,800 for food. For 3 hours. That's excessive, even for that crowd." That's what I thought. "Howard, you know these circles better than I do. The country club set the Dunthorpe families. Can you pull up the transaction details? I'm trying to figure out who else was involved in coordinating this." "Hold on." Keyboard clicks. "Yeah, I've got the file. Let me see. There's a co-signer on the deposit authorization." "Who?" More typing. Then a pause. "Name here is Marcus. Just Marcus. No last name listed, which is unusual." "Marcus." I wrote it down. "Not mean anything to you." Howard's voice changed, became careful. "There's a Marcus who moves in those circles. Pearl District Office. Officially, he's a financial consultant, investment strategies, portfolio management, that kind of thing. And unofficially, he's the kind of guy who makes short-term loans to people who can't get them through traditional channels. High interest. No questions asked." My stomach dropped. "You're saying..." "I'm saying if this is the same Marcus, he's not someone you want anywhere near your daughter's wedding, Rich. People like him don't co-sign venue deposits out of friendship." I stared at the name on my notepad. Why would Victoria or Garrett involve someone like that? Maybe they didn't know who he really was. Maybe the Caldwells introduced them. Or maybe he paused. Maybe someone needed money fast and didn't want to explain why. I thought about Garrett Saturday morning. His expensive clothes, his careful words, his constant deference to his parents' expectations. "You think Garrett's in debt to this guy?" "I don't know for sure. But Rich, if I were you, I'd find out. Because men like Marcus don't invest in weddings unless they're expecting a return." After we hung up, I went downstairs and found Victoria's wedding binder. I flipped through until I found the guest list, printed on heavy cream paper, with elegant calligraphy. I scanned the names. Caldwell relatives, business associates, people with addresses in Dunthorpe and Lake Oswego and West Lynn. And there, halfway down the second page, Marcus. Just one name, like he was some kind of celebrity. No title, no address, just Marcus. I set the paper down and walked to the window. Night had fallen, streetlights casting long shadows across the yard. Somewhere in this city, my daughter was planning a wedding to a man I barely knew, surrounded by people who measured worth in dollar signs. And now there was Marcus, whose presence suggested something darker than I'd imagined. Catherine used to say I worried too much. "You're always looking for the weak points, Rich," Sometimes things are exactly what they seem. But I'd been an engineer too long to ignore warning signs. A name with no last name on legal documents. A financial consultant who operated outside normal banking channels. A co-signer on a $12,000 venue deposit for people who supposedly had family money. These weren't coincidences. They were red flags. I picked up my pen and wrote the name again on fresh paper, this time in capitals. Marcus. Something told me I'd need to remember it. Something told me this name would matter more than I could yet understand. The house was quiet around me, but my mind wasn't. It was running calculations, assessing risks, trying to figure out how deep this went, and how badly my daughter was about to get hurt. Outside, the rain started again. I thought about structures under pressure, about hidden weaknesses that don't show up until the weight becomes unbearable. And I wondered what weight Victoria and Garrett were carrying that they couldn't tell me about. Tuesday afternoon, I received an alert on my phone. Another charge. I was in the garage trying to fix a loose hinge on the back door, the kind of small repair that keeps your hands busy when your mind won't settle. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, saw the credit card notification, and felt my jaw tighten. $8,500. Merchant Powell's Fine Jewelry, downtown Portland. Memo line, wedding bands, rush order. I set down my screwdriver and stared at the screen. Wedding bands. Plural. For a moment I felt a flicker of something like relief. Maybe Victoria was finally including me in decisions. Maybe this was legitimate wedding planning we'd somehow missed in Saturday's budget meeting. But $8,500 for wedding bands. And why the rush order? I grabbed my truck keys. Powell's Fine Jewelry sat on Southwest Broadway, wedged between a wine bar and an art gallery, in one of those old Portland buildings with ornate cornices and big plate glass windows. I'd driven past it 1,000 times, never once gone inside. It wasn't the kind of place a retired civil engineer had reason to visit. The door chimed when I pushed it open. Inside, everything was soft lighting and plush carpet glass cases filled with diamonds that caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the walls. A woman behind the counter looked up 60-something reading glasses on a chain, the kind of face that had seen every kind of customer walk through that door. "Can I help you?" "I'm Richard Coleman. My daughter was just here." Recognition flickered across her face. "Mr. Coleman." "Yes, Victoria left about 20 minutes ago." "What did she purchase?" The woman hesitated, glanced toward the back room. "Perhaps you should speak with her directly. I'm the one who paid for it." I kept my voice level, but something in my tone must have convinced her. She nodded and moved to a display case, unlocked it with a small key, and pulled out a navy blue velvet box. She opened it. 2 platinum bands sat nestled in white silk embedded with small diamonds that caught the light. They were beautiful, elegant, simple, clearly expensive. "These are for both of them?" I asked. "No, sir." She closed the box gently. "Just one. For her fiancé." The words didn't make sense at first. "One ring, $8,500. Platinum with conflict-free diamonds. Your daughter wanted the best for him. She was very specific about the quality. For him. Not for both of them. Not a matching set. Just Garrett's ring paid for with my money costing more than most people spent on a used car. She had it engraved," the woman added. Something cold settled in my chest. "May I see?" She hesitated again, then opened the box and tilted it toward the light. Inside the band, in delicate script, I could just make out the words, "To my future. Finally worthy." The air left my lungs. Finally worthy. I stood there in that jewelry store with its soft music and expensive lighting, staring at those 3 words my daughter had chosen, and felt something crack open inside me. Not anger, something worse. Understanding. Victoria didn't think she was enough. Not for Garrett. Not for the Caldwells. Not for the world she was trying so desperately to enter. She thought she had to buy her way in with my money, with elaborate parties, with platinum rings engraved with pleas for validation. Finally worthy, as if everything she'd been before the girl who brought me dandelions, who helped me pour concrete, who laughed with Catherine over ice cream, as if none of that had been worth anything, as if she had to prove herself deserving of love by spending money she didn't have on people who measured worth in dollar signs. Did she seem happy? I heard myself ask. The jeweler looked at me with something like sympathy. She seemed determined, Mr. Coleman. Very determined. Determined. Not happy. Not excited. Not glowing the way a bride should be when choosing symbols of forever. Thank you. I managed and walked out before she could say anything else. I sat in my truck outside the store for a long time, engine off hands, gripping the steering wheel. Downtown Portland moved around me, people walking dogs, carrying coffee, living their Tuesday afternoon lives. Normal lives. Uncomplicated lives. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Dad, about yesterday. Can we talk later? I'm sorry I got upset. I stared at the message. She wanted to apologize for hanging up, for getting defensive about the charges, but she had no idea I knew about this ring, about the engraving, about the fact that she'd spent $8,500 trying to convince someone she was worthy of being loved. Catherine's voice drifted through my memory, not a specific conversation, just her tone, her warmth, the way she used to look at Victoria when our daughter didn't know she was watching. Pure love, unconditional pride, the kind of affection that didn't require proof or payment or platinum. A ring is a symbol rich Catherine had told me once years ago when we were shopping for Victoria's high school class ring. It's supposed to remind you of something real, something that matters. What was this ring supposed to remind Garrett of? That Victoria had paid enough, spent enough, proved herself enough. I started the truck and pulled into traffic, but I barely saw the road. Those words kept burning through my mind to my future. Finally worthy. My daughter thought she wasn't enough, thought she had to buy approval from a man who couldn't even look me in the eye during a budget meeting. Thought she had to erase everything she'd been, everything Catherine and I had tried to teach her, to become someone the Caldwells would accept, and I'd enabled it. By saying yes to the wedding, by not questioning the charges sooner, by being so desperate for Victoria to be happy that I hadn't noticed she'd stopped being herself. I drove home through the late afternoon traffic, past the familiar streets of my city, and felt the weight of my failure settling over me like fog. Catherine would have seen this coming. Catherine would have known what to say, how to reach through Victoria's desperation and remind her who she really was. But Catherine was gone, and I was just a man who built things, structures, systems, solutions. I didn't know how to rebuild my daughter's sense of self-worth. Didn't know how to make her see that she'd always been worthy. Always been enough, always been exactly who she needed to be. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun was setting over Lake Oswego, turning the sky orange and pink. I sat in the truck, staring at my house, the house Victoria wanted to sell, the house she thought was just taking up space, and understood something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't about a wedding anymore. It wasn't even about money. This was about my daughter trying to prove she was worthy of love by becoming someone else entirely. And I didn't know if I could save her from herself. That Tuesday evening, the phone rang. It was Adrienne Sinclair. I'd just gotten home from Powell's, still processing the ring engraving, when her name lit up my screen. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Coleman, I'm so glad I caught you. We have an incredible opportunity. There's a sample sale at one of Portland's premier bridal boutiques. I set my keys down and waited. The designer gown Victoria's been admiring, $18,000, is available tonight for $8,000. But she needs to see it immediately. These samples don't last. I looked at the clock. 7:15. Tonight. I know it's late, but this is the dress. I've already called the boutique. They'll stay open, but we need to move fast. Something felt wrong. The urgency. The pressure. Let me call you back. Mr. Coleman, I really don't think I'll call you back. I hung up and stood in Catherine's kitchen, feeling the day's weight settle over me. The ring, the engraving, finally worthy. And now a dress Victoria apparently needed to see this instant. I climbed the stairs to the master bedroom and opened Catherine's closet, reached past the jackets and blouses until my hand found plastic. I pulled out the garment bag carefully and unzipped it. Catherine's wedding dress, 45 years old, but the ivory lace still looked perfect. Simple T-length 3/4 sleeves. Nothing elaborate. Just a dress a young English teacher had bought in Selwood for $300. I checked inside and found the tag, Catherine's Measurements, saved by Rich 1980. I'd written those numbers down the day after our wedding. Catherine had rolled her eyes. Why are you measuring my wedding dress? In case Victoria wants to wear it someday. She'd hugged me. You're such a planner. Tucked inside the bag, I found an envelope. My name in Catherine's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Rich. Just in case Victoria changes her mind someday. I know she'll want to be her own person, make her own choices. But if she ever wants this, it's here. Ready. Waiting. Like we always were. Love always C. The date, October 2019. 5 months before she died. I sat on our bed and cried for the first time since Catherine's funeral. She'd known, even sick and fading, she'd thought about Victoria's wedding day, had wanted to give her this choice. And Victoria didn't even know it existed. I pulled out my phone and called her. Dad, I'm really busy. Your mother saved her wedding dress for you. Do you want to try it on? Silence. What? Your mother's wedding dress. She left measurements, left a note. She saved it in case you wanted to wear it. A pause. When Victoria spoke, her voice was careful, distant. Dad, that's really sweet. But Mom's dress is vintage. It's from the 80s. The Caldwells expect something more contemporary. Something couture. Your mother wore this dress. It has history. I know, but I'm not living in the past. I need to make my own statement. The words from the ring flashed through my mind. Finally worthy. What kind of statement that you're worthy? What I'd let the anger slip? Nothing. Forget it. Are you okay? Go to your sample sale. Get your $8,000 dress. Adrienne said it was important. Everything's important to Adrienne Victoria. That's how she makes money. That's not fair. Maybe not. But neither is rejecting your mother's dress without even seeing it. Silence stretched between us. I have to go, Victoria said. Adrienne's waiting. She hung up. I sat holding Catherine's dress and felt something shift inside me. Not break. Shift. Like a building settling after stress. Victoria had rejected this dress the way she'd rejected everything else that connected her to who she'd been. The house, our traditions, the values Catherine and I had tried to instill, all dismissed as inadequate for the world she was trying to enter. I carefully folded the dress back into its bag and returned it to Catherine's closet. "She's not ready," I whispered, "and neither am I." But even saying it, I knew something had changed. The sadness I'd been carrying since Saturday was hardening into something else. Something clearer. Determination. I went to my office and pulled out the credit card statements. The wedding budget. The vendor list. I studied them the way I used to study blueprints, looking for weak points for places where intervention was possible. Catherine would have known how to reach Victoria's heart, but Catherine was gone, and I was an engineer. I solved problems by changing variables, by removing unstable elements, by redesigning structures that couldn't support their own weight. If Victoria wouldn't listen to words, maybe she'd understand something else. Outside, the rain picked up drumming against the windows. I turned on my desk lamp and began making notes, my handwriting steady and precise. This wasn't about the wedding anymore. This was about teaching my daughter a lesson about worth, what it really meant, and what it cost. And lessons I was learning sometimes required consequences. The next morning, I drove to the bridal boutique. I'd barely slept. All night, I'd lain awake thinking about Catherine's dress hanging in the closet, about Victoria's dismissive voice on the phone, about that engraving inside the ring. By 5 a.m., I'd given up on sleep and made coffee, watching dawn break over Lake Oswego through the kitchen window. At 8:30, I looked up Evelyn's bridal, the shop Adrian had mentioned, and plugged the address into my phone. Downtown Portland, off Morrison Street. 20 minutes in morning traffic, the shop sat between a hair salon and a coffee roaster, its window display featuring mannequins in elaborate white gowns that probably cost more than my first car. A small bell chimed when I pushed open the door. Inside smelled like perfume and new fabric. An older woman looked up from behind a desk. 60-something reading glasses perched on her nose, wearing a navy dress that looked expensive but comfortable. "Can I help you?" "I'm Richard Coleman. My daughter was here last night." Recognition crossed her face, followed by something that looked like discomfort. "Mr. Coleman, yes. Victoria left about an hour ago, actually." An hour ago. So she'd been here this morning, not last night. The sample sale urgency had been manufactured. Did she find something? The woman her name tag said. Evelyn stood and smoothed her dress. She purchased a gown, the Vera Wang, $18,000. I'd expected this, but hearing it still felt like a punch. The full-price dress, not the sample. She said it was more appropriate for her venue. Evelyn's tone was careful, neutral. The voice of someone who'd had difficult conversations before. Did she use my card? Evelyn moved to her computer, clicked a few keys. "No, sir. She paid cash, $5,000 as a deposit. The balance is due in 2 weeks." Cash. $5,000 in cash. Where would she get that kind of cash? "I'm sorry, Mr. Coleman. I don't know." I thought about the credit card charges, the engagement party, the Las Vegas trip, the ring. None of those had been cash. Victoria had used my card without hesitation. But for this dress, she'd paid cash, which meant she didn't want me to know about it, didn't want the charge showing up on my statement. Did Adrienne Sinclair have anything to do with this decision? Evelyn's expression shifted just slightly, but I caught it. Ms. Sinclair was very involved in the selection process. She has strong opinions about what suits her clients. I'm sure she does. I kept my voice level, and I'm sure those opinions always involve the most expensive option. Evelyn didn't disagree. I thanked her and walked back to my truck, sat there in the parking spot, engine off, trying to piece together what I knew. Victoria had rejected her mother's dress, a dress Catherine had saved specifically for her, had left measurements and a note in favor of an $18,000 gown she'd paid for in cash. Cash she shouldn't have had, which meant either Garrett had given it to her, or the Caldwells had, or Victoria had gotten it from somewhere else entirely. None of those options felt good. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Dad, I'm sorry about last night. I know Mom's dress means a lot to you. Can we talk later? I stared at the message. She wanted to apologize to smooth things over, but she had no idea I knew she'd bought a different dress this morning. Had no idea I knew about the cash, about the ring engraving, about Marcus on the engagement party guest list. I was collecting pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to see completed. I started typing a response, then deleted it, then started again. Finally, we should all sit down and talk. You, me, and Garrett. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, okay, when? But I didn't want a family meeting. I wanted to talk to Garrett alone. Wanted to look him in the eye without Victoria there to defend him, to make excuses to smooth over whatever truth I was about to uncover. I pulled up Garrett's number. Victoria had added it to my phone Saturday after the budget meeting and sent a text. Can we meet for coffee? Just the 2 of us. Today at noon. The response came quickly. Stumptown Coffee, Pearl District. See you there. No questions. No hesitation. Just immediate agreement, which either meant he had nothing to hide, or he was smart enough to know refusing would look suspicious. I checked the time. 9:45. I had just over 2 hours to figure out what I was going to say, or maybe what I was going to ask, because the questions were piling up faster than I could process them. Where had Victoria gotten $5,000 in cash? Why was she hiding purchases from me now, when she'd had no problem charging $62,000 to my card? What was Garrett's role in all of this? Was he pressuring her, or was she pressuring herself, trying to impress his family? And what did Marcus, just Marcus, no last name, have to do with any of it? I drove to a coffee shop near my house, ordered a cup I didn't really want, and sat by the window watching Portland wake up. People walking dogs, joggers, a woman pushing a stroller. Normal Wednesday morning lives. Mine used to be normal too. Wake up, read the paper, maybe work on a project in the garage, call Victoria once a week to check in. Simple. Uncomplicated. But that was before I'd seen the credit card statements. Before I'd learned my daughter thought she had to buy her way into being worthy. Before I'd held Catherine's wedding dress and realized Victoria was ashamed of everything we'd given her. At 11:30, I headed toward the Pearl District. Traffic was light. I found parking 2 blocks from Stumptown and walked hands in my pockets, thinking about what Catherine would say if she were here. She'd tell me to lead with love, to remember Victoria was still our daughter, still the girl we'd raised, even if she was making choices we didn't understand. But Catherine had never had to watch someone try to erase her memory, had never had to see their daughter reject everything they'd built together in favor of strangers with money. I reached the coffee shop at 11:55. Through the window, I could see it was busy, the lunchtime crowd, people on laptops, the hiss of the espresso machine. Garrett wasn't there yet. I had 5 minutes to decide how to play this: the concerned father-in-law, the suspicious investigator, the man who just discovered his daughter was hiding cash payments and rejecting family heirlooms. In the end, I decided on the truth. I'd ask direct questions and see if Garrett gave me direct answers. Because one way or another, I was going to find out what my daughter had gotten herself into, and whether the man she was about to marry was part of the problem or part of the solution. That Wednesday afternoon, I met Garrett at Stumptown Coffee. The Pearl District location sat in a converted warehouse, exposed brick industrial lighting, the smell of fresh roasted beans mixing with the hum of conversation. I'd arrived early and claimed a corner table positioned so I could see the door. Old habit from years of job site meetings where you wanted to control the space. Garrett walked in at noon, exactly dressed in business casual pressed khakis, button-down shirt, leather messenger bag slung over one shoulder. He spotted me and raised a hand, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. He looked nervous. Good. He should be. Mr. Coleman. He shook my hand and sat down across from me. Thanks for meeting. Call me Richard. Coffee. I'm good, thanks. We sat for a moment in uncomfortable silence. Around us, the coffee shop buzzed with the Pearl District lunch crowd. Young professionals on laptops, designers with portfolio cases, the kind of people who measured success in Instagram followers and networking events. Beautiful weather we're having, Garrett said finally. For September anyway. I didn't have patience for small talk. Garrett, I need to ask you something directly. He straightened in his chair. Okay, do you love my daughter? Whatever he'd been expecting, it wasn't that. His eyes widened slightly. Yes, absolutely. Then why does she feel like she needs to buy your approval? What? I leaned forward, keeping my voice low but firm. The ring. To my future. Finally worthy. What does that mean? All the color drained from Garrett's face. He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. She told you about the engraving. The jeweler did. Talk to me. Garrett was quiet for a long moment, and I watched him struggle with whatever he was about to say. Finally, he sighed a sound that came from somewhere deep and tired. My parents, he began, they have expectations. What kind of expectations? They want Victoria to fit into our world. The right dress, the right venue, the right... He gestured vaguely. The right everything. They want her to be someone they can show off at the club, someone who reflects well on the family name. Image. Yes. I sat back studying him. He couldn't meet my eyes. And you? What do you want? I want Victoria to be happy. Is she happy? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Garrett stared at the table, at the wood grain, at anything but me. I don't know anymore, he said quietly. Then why are you marrying her? He looked up at that, and for the first time I saw something real in his expression. Something that looked like pain. Because I love her. And because... He trailed off. Because what? Because my family expects it. Because we've already sent the invitations, booked the venue, made all the announcements. Because backing out now would be... He shook his head. It would be complicated. Complicated. Not wrong. not impossible, just complicated. I thought about Victoria at 18, when she'd wanted to defer college for a year to travel. Catherine and I had supported her, even though everyone else had questioned it. We'd believed in letting her find her own path, even when it wasn't the conventional one. But Garrett wasn't like that. Garrett was a man who did what was expected, who followed the path laid out for him, who measured decisions by what other people would think, rather than what he actually wanted. Garrett, I said, and he looked up at me. Can I tell you something I learned in 40 years of engineering? He nodded. A structure is only as strong as its weakest point. You can have the best materials, the best design, the most expensive construction. But if there's one weak connection, one compromised joint, the whole thing can fail. And when it fails, people get hurt. I'm not sure I understand. Your marriage is a structure, and right now it's built on weak connections. Victoria's trying to be someone she's not. You're trying to please parents who sound like they'll never be satisfied. Neither of you is choosing each other. You're choosing the idea of each other. The image. Garrett's hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. It's not that simple. It is, actually. It's the simplest thing in the world. Either you choose her, the real, her the one who grew up in a house in Lake Oswego and used to ride her bike in the driveway, or you choose what your parents want. But you can't have both. And if you try, you'll destroy her in the process. Mr. Coleman Richard, I do care about her. I do. I believe you. But caring isn't enough. Not when she's convinced herself she has to be worthy of your love. Not when she's spending money she doesn't have, rejecting her mother's memory, hiding cash payments from her own father. Do you know where she got $5,000 in cash this morning? His face gave him away before he could speak. He knew. Where Garrett? He shook his head. I can't, or won't. It's complicated. There was that word again. Complicated. The excuse people used when they didn't want to face uncomfortable truths. I stood up. I'd heard enough. You know what's not complicated? Honesty, integrity. Choosing the person you claim to love over everyone else's expectations. That's simple. Hard, maybe, but simple. Garrett looked up at me and I saw it then. The truth he wouldn't say out loud. He wasn't strong enough to choose Victoria. He never had been. Think about what I said, I told him. Because if you marry my daughter under these conditions, you'll both be miserable. She'll spend her whole life trying to prove she's good enough, and you'll spend yours wondering why you didn't have the courage to be honest. I turned to leave, but stopped. One more question, one more test. That name on the engagement party guest list. Marcus. Who is he? Garrett's expression shuddered immediately. Fear flickered across his face. He's just a family friend. Try again. I really can't or won't silence. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. I walked out of Stumptown Coffee into the bright September afternoon, leaving Garrett sitting alone at that table. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. I'd gotten my answer. Garrett wasn't going to choose Victoria. He was going to do what his parents expected, what looked good on paper, what was easiest and least complicated. And Victoria was going to marry a man who loved her just enough to let her destroy herself, trying to be worthy of him. The fall air was crisp, smelling of rain that hadn't yet fallen. I walked the 2 blocks back to my truck, slowly, hands in my pockets, thinking about structures and weak points and catastrophic failures. I'd spent 40 years preventing disasters, designing around problems before they became crises, building in safety margins so that when stress came, and it always came, the structure could handle it. But I couldn't prevent this. Victoria had already made her choices. Garrett had made his. The only question left was what I was going to do about mine. A few days later, on Saturday, I called a family meeting. I'd spent those days in careful preparation. Thursday, I organized my financial documents. Friday, I met with my accountant to review what I could realistically offer. By Saturday morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I set the meeting for 6 o'clock. That gave me time to prepare the house, to set everything up right. I cleaned the formal dining room, the one with Catherine's antique table she'd found at an estate sale in Milwaukee, polished the dark wood until it gleamed. At 5:30, I laid out my documents. My retirement portfolio summary, just an overview, a folder containing preliminary paperwork for something I'd started researching, the Catherine Coleman Foundation. Still just an idea on paper, but real enough. And in a sealed envelope, a check. $95,000. I'd written it that morning, signed it, stared at it, before sealing it away. Victoria texted at 5:45, "On our way." They arrived at 6:03. Victoria wore a navy dress. Garrett had on slacks and a sweater. They looked like they were heading to a job interview. I met them at the door. "Come in." "Hey, Dad." Victoria hugged me. "Thanks for inviting us." We moved to the dining room. Victoria stopped when she saw the formal table, the documents. "Dad, what's all this?" "Sit down, please." They sat. Victoria took Catherine's chair. Garrett sat across from her. I took my usual spot at the head. The evening light slanted through the windows. The house was quiet except for Catherine's grandmother's clock ticking on the mantel. "Thank you both for coming," I said. "I've been thinking about the wedding." Victoria leaned forward, hopeful. "And I know it's expensive, but let me finish." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "I've reviewed everything. The $320,000 budget. The unauthorized charges, $62,700. The engagement party I wasn't invited to. The dress you bought with cash. The house you want to sell." Garrett shifted. Victoria's face went blank. "I've thought about all of it. And I want to make you an offer. A final offer." I slid the envelope across the table. Victoria opened it slowly. I watched her face as she read the check. Hope flickered, then confusion. "Dad, this is $95,000. That's what I can give you. Use it however you want. Scale down the wedding. Ask the Caldwells to cover the difference. I don't care. But that's what you're getting from me." "But this isn't enough for—" "I know. That's the point." Garrett cleared his throat. "Mr. Coleman, perhaps my parents could—" "Your parents aren't my concern, Garrett. My daughter is. Right now, my daughter is planning a wedding that costs more than most people make in 5 years. For what, to impress people who measure worth in flower arrangements?" "Dad, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You've spent nearly $400,000, some without asking, trying to buy approval from people who should love you for who you are." Victoria's hands shook. "Not the Caldwells have standards." "I don't care about their standards. I care about you. I'm watching you turn yourself inside out trying to be someone you're not." That's not fair. What's not fair is being treated like an ATM. What's not fair is watching you reject everything your mother and I gave you. What's not fair is knowing you bought an $8,500 ring engraved with "finally worthy" because you don't think you're good enough. She went white. How did you? The jeweler told me. Garrett stared at the table. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. This check represents what I can afford without jeopardizing my future. It's generous. It's more than most parents give, but it's not $320,000. So what are we supposed to do? Make choices, real choices about what matters. Decide if you're marrying Garrett because you love him or because his family has money. Figure out if this wedding is about celebrating your marriage or performing for an audience. Garrett spoke quietly. Maybe we should take a breath. Garrett, this is between me and my daughter. He looked stung but didn't argue. Victoria pushed the check back. We can't do it with this. Then cancel. We can't just cancel. Yes, you can. Everything can be canceled. The only question is whether you have the courage. Silence fell heavy. The clock kept ticking. Victoria stood abruptly. I need air. She walked out. I heard the front door close. Garrett and I sat across from each other. She loves you, I said quietly. I know. Do you love her? He met my eyes. Yes, but not enough apparently. The honesty surprised me. Then why go through with it? Because I don't know how to stop. I picked up the check, put it back in my pocket. Victoria wasn't going to take it. The room fell into complete silence. I could hear the clock ticking my own heartbeat. This was the moment, the breaking point, and I knew something fundamental had just broken. Victoria stared at the check like it was something from another planet. The silence stretched 30 seconds that felt like hours. I watched her face, watched the calculations happening behind her eyes. The math wasn't working out the way she wanted, and she knew it. $95,000, she said finally, her voice flat. That's all. That's more than most people spend on a down payment for a house. But we've already committed to vendors. Adrian says if we cancel now, we'll lose all our deposits. The venue alone. Adrian works for you, Victoria. Not the other way around. She looked at the check again, then slid it back across the table toward me. The movement was deliberate, almost ceremonial. This isn't enough, Dad. Then cancel the wedding. Garrett shifted in his seat. Mr. Coleman, maybe we can find a compromise. No. Victoria cut him off, her voice sharp. She stood up, hands flat on the table. He doesn't understand. The Caldwells are expecting a certain kind of event. Garrett's sister's wedding was in Portland monthly. We can't scale back to something small and cheap. I don't care what the Caldwells are expecting. You never cared. Her voice cracked, years of something rising to the surface. You never cared about any of this. Mom would have understood. Mom would have wanted me to be happy. Something snapped inside me. Don't you dare bring your mother into this. Why not? She always supported my dreams. She always wanted me to have everything. Your mother wanted you to be yourself, not someone's trophy wife. Victoria's face flushed red. Trophy, I'm building a life, Dad. A real life. with real opportunities. Not stuck in some outdated house in Lake Oswego working some meaningless job, meaningless. The word came out quiet, deadly quiet. Garrett put his hand on Victoria's arm. Victoria, maybe we should... She shook him off. No, Garrett. He needs to hear this. I've spent my whole life in that house, surrounded by his old blueprints and Mom's old books and old everything. The Caldwells are offering me something better, something real, a life that actually matters. And what I gave you doesn't matter. That's not what your mother gave you doesn't matter. The home we built, the values we taught you. The life we provided, none of that matters because it wasn't expensive enough, because we didn't have a gate at the end of our driveway. You're twisting my words. I'm repeating them. I picked up the check, held it between us. This represents 43 years of work, of saving, of planning for a future where I could help my daughter when she needed it. And you're telling me it's not enough, because you've convinced yourself you need to throw a coronation instead of a wedding. It's not a coronation. Then what is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to prove to strangers that you're worth knowing, that you're finally... I stopped myself. Finally what? Nothing. No, say it. Finally what? Finally worthy. The words hung between us like a verdict. That's what you had engraved in Garrett's ring, isn't it? To my future. Finally worthy. As if everything you were before him, before the Caldwells, before this wedding, as if none of it counted. Victoria's face went white. Garrett looked like he wanted to disappear. That's what this is really about. I continued, my voice steady, now cold. You don't think you're good enough, so you're buying approval with my money, on your mother's memory, on a foundation that doesn't exist. You're building a life on debt and appearances and desperation. I'm not desperate. You spent $8,500 on a ring for him. Nothing for yourself. You rejected your mother's wedding dress, the one she saved specifically for you, because it wasn't couture. You're planning to sell the house you grew up in because it's just taking up space. If that's not desperate, I don't know what is. You don't understand what it's like, Victoria said, and now there were tears in her eyes. You don't know what it's like to always be the scholarship kid, the one whose parents drive a 15-year-old truck, the one who has to work during summer break, while everyone else is in Europe. I finally have a chance to be part of something bigger, to be someone who matters. You've always mattered. You've always been someone. The only person who doesn't see that is you. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one trying to fit into a world where everyone else has everything. And you think marrying into money will fix that. You think the Caldwells will suddenly make you feel worthy. Victoria, it doesn't work that way. You'll spend your whole life chasing their approval, and you'll never get it. Because people like that don't approve. They just keep raising the bar. Garrett finally spoke. Mr. Coleman, my parents aren't your parents. I said, turning to him, have created a situation where my daughter thinks she needs to spend $400,000 to be acceptable, where she's willing to erase her own mother's memory to fit their image. So forgive me if I don't particularly care about defending them right now. Garrett went silent. Victoria wiped her eyes. So that's it, $95,000 or nothing. That's what I can give you without destroying my own future. What you do with it is up to you. And if we can't make it work, then you'll have to make other choices. Ask the Caldwells to pay. Scale everything back. Postpone until you can afford what you want. I don't know, Victoria, but what I won't do is mortgage everything your mother and I built so you can throw a party to impress people who don't actually care about you. The room fell silent again. Even the clock seemed to hold its breath. Victoria really looked at me, and I saw something in her expression I hadn't seen in months. Not the polished, careful version of my daughter who'd walked in tonight. Something rawer, more real. "You really won't help us," she said softly. "I'm helping you, just not the way you wanted." She picked up the check one more time, stared at it. Then she looked at Garrett, who wouldn't meet her eyes. Then back at me. "Fine," she said, and in that one word I heard everything about to break. If you're still watching, drop a comment. What do you think Richard will do next? I genuinely want to hear your predictions before we reach the breaking point. Quick reminder, what follows is a fictional story crafted to explore human emotions. If it's not for you, feel free to stop here. This house, this life, everything you built, it's all worthless. The words hit like an explosion. Not loud. Quiet, actually. But devastating in their precision, in their aim. Victoria stood there with her arms crossed, chin up, and delivered the verdict I'd been afraid to hear since this whole thing started. The air left the room. "What did you just say?" My voice came out steady. Too steady. "I said it's worthless. To me. To my future. The Caldwells have real wealth, real property, real status. This..." She gestured around the dining room at Catherine's antique table at the walls I'd built with my own hands. "This is just small, provincial. It doesn't mean anything anymore. Real status. Yes, and I'm finally going to have it. I'm finally going to be someone who matters. Someone people respect. Someone. You already are someone, Victoria. You're my daughter." Her laugh was bitter, sharp. "That's not enough. Don't you see, being Richard Coleman's daughter from Lake Oswego, that doesn't open doors? That doesn't get me into the rooms where decisions are made. The Caldwells can give me that. They can give me a life that actually counts for something. A life that counts." I repeated the words, slowly tasting their poison. Yes. A real life. Not this museum of the past you're living in. Not Mom's old books and your old blueprints and memories of things that don't matter anymore. I'm moving forward. I'm building something. And if you can't support that, then what? She met my eyes. Then I don't need you. The silence that followed was nuclear. Complete. The kind of quiet that comes after something irreversible happens. I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing Victoria's face, and felt 40 years of engineering instinct kick in. When a structure fails, you don't try to save it mid-collapse. You let it fall. You clear the debris. You start over with better materials. I picked up the $95,000 check. "You're right," I said quietly. "This isn't enough." Hope flickered across Victoria's face. "Finally, I tore the check in half. The sound was surprisingly loud in the silent room. Victoria's mouth fell open. I tore it again. Quarters. "Dad, what are you..." "Again. Eighths. Stop! What are you doing? I let the pieces flutter onto Catherine's table like snow. If everything I built is worthless, then this is worthless too. You can't just, I can. And I did. I looked at Garrett, who'd gone pale, who looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Take her home, Garrett. Take her to your real wealth, your real property, your real status. Mr. Coleman, please. Please what? Please fund a wedding for a woman who just told me my life's work means nothing. Please keep enabling her desperate attempt to buy approval from people who will never actually accept her. No, I'm done. Victoria's hands were shaking. You're making a mistake. No. I made a mistake 28 years ago when I thought love was enough. Your mother and I gave you everything we had. We taught you kindness and integrity and the value of building things that last. But we forgot one lesson. We forgot to teach you what things actually cost. I hate you. Her voice broke on the words. I know. But one day you'll understand. One day, you'll realize that being someone who matters isn't about wealth or status or impressing strangers at country clubs. It's about being someone you can be proud of when you look in the mirror. And right now, you're not. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you? Your mother spent her last months writing you a note about her wedding dress, hoping you'd wear it someday. She saved measurements. She planned for your happiness. And you called it vintage. You called it inadequate. You threw away her memory like it was garbage because it wasn't expensive enough for the Caldwells. Tears were streaming down Victoria's face now, but I couldn't stop. The dam had broken. She would have understood, Victoria whispered. No, she would have been heartbroken. Just like I am. Because the daughter we raised, the one who brought me dandelions and helped me pour concrete and laughed over ice cream, that girl wouldn't have needed an $8,500 ring to feel worthy. That girl knew her worth came from who she was, not what she could afford. That girl was naive. That girl was real. Victoria grabbed her purse. I can't do this. Garrett, we're leaving. Garrett stood slowly looking between us like a man watching a car crash. Mr. Coleman, Save it. Just take care of her. Or don't. I'm not sure you're capable of either. They left. Victoria first, moving fast, not looking back. Garrett hesitated at the doorway. I'm sorry, he said quietly. So am I. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the dining room with the pieces of a $95,000 check scattered across my dead wife's table. I should have felt something. Regret, maybe. Fear. Doubt about what I'd just done. But all I felt was clarity. Cold, absolute clarity. Victoria had made her choice. She'd chosen appearances over authenticity, status over substance, the Caldwells' approval over her own father's love. And in doing so, she'd revealed something I'd been afraid to see. My daughter had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who measured worth in dollars and addresses and social climbing. I sat in that silence until the clock struck midnight. The house around me, the one I'd designed, the one Catherine had made a home, the one Victoria called worthless, creaked and settled in the darkness. Catherine's voice drifted through my memory. Something she'd told me once when Victoria was 16 and had made a terrible decision we'd had to let her face consequences for. The hardest thing a parent does is let them fall rich. But sometimes falling is the only way they learn to get back up. I'm letting her fall. I whispered to the empty room. I hope you're right. Then I stood, gathered the pieces of the torn check, and walked to my office. I turned on the desk lamp, pulled out a legal pad, and began writing. Project name, lesson in value. Timeline 4 weeks until wedding. Objective, teach my daughter what things actually cost. I wrote late into the night, the engineer in me taking over, turning heartbreak into strategy, pain into purpose. By 3 a.m., I had a plan. It was cold. It was calculated. It was possibly the most important thing I'd ever design. And unlike the bridges and buildings I'd spent a lifetime creating, this project's success wouldn't be measured in steel and concrete. It would be measured in whether I could save my daughter from herself. Sunday morning, I woke up with absolute clarity. I hadn't really slept maybe an hour, maybe 2. But when dawn broke over Lake Oswego, painting the sky pink and gold, I felt more awake than I had in weeks. The exhaustion, the heartbreak, the confusion, all of it had burned away overnight, leaving something harder behind. Purpose. I made coffee and stood at the kitchen window watching the neighborhood come to life. Dogs being walked, joggers, a teenager retrieving the newspaper, normal Sunday routines. While inside this house, everything had changed. I'd spent 40 years as an engineer solving problems, identifying structural weaknesses, designing solutions. This was just another problem, another blueprint that needed redrawing. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself imagine it. The wedding day, Victoria at the Abernethy Center in her $18,000 dress. Vendors not showing up. Guests arriving to locked doors. The Caldwells' faces as their perfect day collapsed. I shook my head, clearing the image. No, I wouldn't imagine it. I would design it. Engineer it with the same precision I'd used to build bridges for 4 decades. I picked up my phone and called Robert Patterson. He answered on the 3rd ring, groggy. "Rich, it's 7 a.m. on a Sunday. I need to see you Monday morning. First thing." A pause. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's finally clear. Can you do 8? Yeah. Yeah, I can. Rich, are you okay? I'm better than I've been in a long time. See you Monday. The rest of Sunday I worked. Pulled out financial documents, organized them by account, made lists, ran projections. By evening, I had a complete picture of what I owned, what I could liquidate, what I could reallocate. It was enough. Monday morning, I drove to the Pearl District. Robert's office occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse, glass and steel and city views. His assistant showed me to a conference room. Robert came in with coffee concern on his face. "Rich, what's going on?" "I need to liquidate assets, not everything, but enough." His eyebrows rose. "How much?" "Enough to fund a foundation and cover a wedding that isn't going to happen." Robert set his coffee down. "You want to explain that?" So I did. Not everything, not the worthless comment, not the torn check. Just the essentials. Victoria was planning a wedding I wouldn't fund. I was redirecting those resources elsewhere. When I finished, Robert was quiet. "Rich, this is big. Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure." "What kind of foundation?" "The Catherine Coleman Foundation. For civil engineering students. Full scholarships. 5 students per year, tuition and living expenses, everything they need." Robert's expression shifted. "In Catherine's name. She believed in education, in giving people opportunities. This is her legacy, the one Victoria doesn't want. Robert pulled out his laptop. Let's talk numbers. We spent the next hour going through my portfolio, retirement accounts, investments, house equity. When we finished, Robert sat back. This is doable. You could fund 10 scholarships annually if you wanted. Let's start with 5. Keep it manageable. Once we set this up, once we create the trust, it's not easily reversible. That's the point. I don't want it reversible. I want Victoria to understand that some decisions have consequences that can't be undone. Robert studied me. You're teaching her a lesson. I'm teaching her what her mother tried to teach her. That worth isn't measured in bank accounts. That the things that matter, education, opportunity, legacy, those are what you build with your resources. She's going to be devastated. She already is. She just doesn't know it yet. Right now, she thinks the Caldwells are her future. But that foundation is going to crack, and when it does, she'll need to remember who she really is. And you think this will help? It's the only thing that might. Robert nodded, then turned back to his laptop. I'll start the paperwork today. This will take about a week to process liquidating assets, setting up the trust filing foundation documents. Perfect. Robert closed his laptop. Rich, I've known you 20 years. I've never seen you like this. Like what? This calm, this certain. You're in full engineer mode. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm designing a solution. The problem is, my daughter has forgotten what matters. The solution is showing her what her mother would have wanted her legacy to be. It's ruthless. It's necessary. We shook hands at the door. As I left, Robert called after me. Rich Catherine would be proud, not of the situation, but of what you're building from it. I nodded and walked out. The Pearl District hummed with Monday energy, people heading to work, coffee shops filling up. But for me, nothing was normal anymore. I was 48 hours past the moment my daughter had called my life worthless. And instead of breaking, I'd transformed. The grief had crystallized into strategy. The heartbreak had become blueprint. By the time I reached my truck, I was already thinking about my next meeting. The lawyer, the vendor cancellations, the systematic dismantling of a wedding that should never have grown this large. 4 weeks until October 12th. 4 weeks to teach Victoria what things really cost. I pulled into Portland traffic, and for the first time since Saturday night, I smiled. That same Monday afternoon, I met with Daniel Fitzgerald. His law office sat on the 20th floor of a downtown Portland high-rise, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering views of the Willamette River and the West Hills beyond. I'd been here before when Catherine died, when we'd updated our estate planning, when I'd needed contract reviews for major projects. Daniel had handled it all with the quiet competence of someone who'd seen every kind of legal situation. But he'd never seen me like this. Rich. He stood when his assistant showed me in, came around his massive desk to shake my hand. Robert called me this morning. Said you were setting up a foundation. That's right, and rewriting your will. Completely. Daniel gestured to the leather chairs by his window. We sat, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Below the city moved cars crossing bridges, boats on the river, the ordinary machinery of life continuing while mine was being dismantled and rebuilt. Walk me through it, Daniel said finally. So I did. The Catherine Coleman Foundation full scholarships for civil engineering students, 5 per year, covering everything from tuition to housing to books. Robert was handling the financial setup. I needed Daniel to handle the legal framework. And I needed to change my will. All remaining assets go to the foundation upon my death. I said, my voice steady. The house, my retirement accounts, investment portfolio, everything. Victoria is removed as primary beneficiary. Daniel's pen stopped moving across his legal pad. Rich, she can receive support from the foundation, but only if she volunteers for it. Minimum 2 years of service. She wants to understand what work means, what earning something means. She can earn her inheritance. You're essentially disinheriting your daughter. I'm giving her an opportunity to prove she understands what her mother valued. Education, service, building something that lasts. If she can demonstrate that she'll benefit from the foundation, just like any other student would. But she doesn't get a free pass just because she's my daughter. Daniel set his pen down. This is extreme. Is it legal? Yes. It's your estate. You can structure it however you want. But Rich, are you sure this will create an irrevocable trust? Once it's set up, you can't easily undo it. If you change your mind, I won't. Victoria will fight this. Let her. The trust will be airtight. That's why I'm hiring you. Daniel studied me for a long moment. We'd known each other 20 years. He'd been at Catherine's funeral, had helped me through the worst period of my life. He'd never seen me like this, cold, calculated, absolutely certain. What happened, Rich? I could have lied, could have kept it vague. But Daniel deserved the truth. Saturday night, Victoria told me everything I'd built this life, this career, 43 years of work, was worthless. She said the Caldwells had real wealth, real status, and that's what mattered. Not me, not what her mother and I gave her, just their money and their name. Daniel's expression shifted. Jesus. She's planning a wedding that costs more than most people's annual salary. She's buying approval from people who will never actually accept her. And she's using my money to do it without asking, without caring about what it costs me or what it means. So you're teaching her a lesson. I'm teaching her what Catherine tried to teach her. That worth isn't about bank accounts or country club memberships. That legacy, real legacy, is about what you build for other people. What you leave behind that matters. Daniel picked up his pen again. All right, let's do this properly. Foundation charter first. We'll establish the Catherine Coleman Foundation as a 501c3. That gives it tax-exempt status and ensures it can operate in perpetuity. Good. Then we'll create an irrevocable trust to hold your assets. That protects them from any legal challenges Victoria might mount. The trust will be the primary funder of the foundation. And my will. We rewrite it to reflect all of this. Victoria becomes a conditional beneficiary. She can benefit from the foundation's resources, but only through the established channels. No direct inheritance unless specific criteria are met. What criteria? 2 years of documented volunteer service to the foundation. And Daniel paused, thinking. What if we add an educational component? She has to complete some kind of training or certification related to the foundation's mission. Show she understands what it's actually about. I considered that. I like it. Make it part of the terms. For the next hour, we worked through details. Foundation governance structure. Board of directors, I'd serve as founding director with Robert and Daniel as initial board members. Scholarship selection criteria. Application process. Everything needed to make this real, permanent, unassailable. When we finally finished, Daniel sat back. This is bulletproof, Rich. Once I file these documents, once the trust is established, Victoria won't be able to touch it. Even if she contests the will, the irrevocable trust protects everything. That's exactly what I want. What about the wedding? I've already started rescinding financial support, effective immediately. She knows, not yet, but she will soon enough. I'm canceling vendor contracts this week. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late to salvage it. Daniel's expression was hard to read. Part concern, part something like admiration. You've thought this through. I'm an engineer. It's what I do. When do you want to announce the foundation, make it public? I looked at the calendar on Daniel's desk. October 12th was circled in red, Victoria's wedding date. 4 weeks away. 2 weeks, I said. Right before the wedding. I want Victoria to understand that while she was planning her spectacle, I was building her mother's legacy. The legacy she rejected. That's going to devastate her. Good. Maybe devastation is what she needs to remember who she actually is. Daniel walked me to the door when we finished. Rich, for what it's worth. Catherine would understand why you're doing this. Would she approve? I think she'd be heartbroken about the situation, but proud of the solution, this foundation. It's exactly what she would have wanted. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Outside, the autumn afternoon was cooling, clouds rolling in from the coast. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking up at the building, where I just legally ensured my daughter's inheritance would require her to prove she'd learned something about value. It felt ruthless, cold. Exactly the kind of thing I'd never imagined myself doing. But then I'd never imagined my daughter would call my life's work worthless either. I walked to my truck, pulled out of the parking garage and headed home. 2 major meetings done. Foundation established. Legal protections in place. Tomorrow I'd start the real work, dismantling a wedding piece by piece, vendor by vendor, until nothing was left but the lesson I was determined to teach. 4 weeks until October 12th. The countdown had begun. Over the next week, I began the systematic dismantling. Tuesday morning, I started with the venue, called Abernethy Center at 8 a.m. before I could second-guess myself. This is Richard Coleman. I need to cancel the October 12th wedding reservation. The events coordinator sounded surprised. Mr. Coleman, the wedding is less than a month away. According to our contract, you'll forfeit your deposit. I understand. $10,000. Process the cancellation. A pause. Are you certain perhaps the bride and groom would like to? I'm certain. Cancel it. I'll need this in writing. You'll have it by end of day. I hung up and immediately drafted the email. Formal, professional, final. Sent it before I could think too hard about what I was doing. 1 down. Wednesday, I worked through the rest. Called the florist first. This is Richard Coleman. I need to cancel the floral order for the Coleman-Caldwell wedding. The florist, a woman whose invoice had read $32,000 for roses and peonies, tried to negotiate. Mr. Coleman, we've already ordered most of the flowers. We can't simply check your contract. I'm the payer. I have cancellation rights. Send me the final accounting of what I owe for work already completed. Next was the photography team, then the band, then the lighting company. Each call followed the same pattern: surprise, resistance, eventually acceptance. By Wednesday evening, I'd canceled 6 vendors. Thursday morning, I made the call I'd been dreading most. Adrian Sinclair speaking. Adrian, this is Richard Coleman. Her voice brightened artificially. Mr. Coleman, I was just reviewing final details for Victoria's big day. I'm terminating your services, effective immediately. Silence. Then, excuse me. You're fired. I'm canceling the contract. You can't do that. We have a binding agreement. I've invested months in this wedding, coordinated vendors, managed timelines. Read the contract, Adrienne. Paragraph 7, subsection 3. The payer has the right to terminate services with written notice. You'll receive that notice today. But the wedding is in 3 weeks. Do you have any idea what this will do to Victoria? That's between me and my daughter. Mr. Coleman, please, let's discuss this rationally. There's nothing to discuss. You'll be paid for work completed through today. Nothing more. Goodbye, Adrienne. I hung up while she was still protesting. Within hours, the cancellations began rippling outward. The vendors notified Victoria it was in their contracts, their liability protection. Tuesday afternoon, Abernethy Center sent her a formal notice. Wednesday, the florist called her directly. Thursday, Adrian apparently phoned in a panic. By Thursday evening, my phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. What have you done? Her voice was raw, panicked. What have you done? I withdrew my financial support, as is my right. The wedding is in 3 weeks. The venue just canceled. The florist, the photographer, Dad, everything's falling apart. Then you have 3 weeks to figure it out. Figure it out. How am I supposed to? We've lost the deposits. We can't afford to rebook everything. The Caldwells are furious. I imagine they are. This is insane. You can't just destroy my wedding because you're angry. I'm not destroying anything, Victoria. I'm simply no longer funding it. There's a difference. You're doing this to punish me. I'm doing this to teach you. There's a difference there too. Teach me what? That you're cruel, that you don't care if I'm humiliated in front of everyone I know. I'm teaching you that actions have consequences, that when you tell someone their life's work is worthless, they might decide to stop working for you. She was crying now. I didn't mean, yes, you did. You meant every word, and now you're learning what it costs. The Caldwells can't cover everything on such short notice. Garrett's parents are saying... She stopped. What are Garrett's parents saying? Silence. Victoria, what are they saying? They're saying maybe we should postpone, that this is too much chaos, that it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. There it is. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. When things get difficult, when appearances are threatened, the Caldwells fold. And you're realizing that all their wealth and status don't actually solve problems. They just make them look prettier until they can't anymore. I hate you. You've said that before. It doesn't change anything. She hung up. I sat in my office, phone in hand, and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No regret. Just the cold clarity of a plan being executed exactly as designed. Friday morning, I made one final call. Jennifer Brooks speaking. Jennifer, it's Richard Coleman. I'm ready to list the house. Jennifer had sold homes in Lake Oswego for 20 years. She knew this neighborhood, knew property values, knew me. Richard, are you sure this is a big decision? I'm sure. I want it listed high. I want it sold fast. Fast might mean accepting a lower offer. I'll take that risk. How soon can you get the paperwork done? I can have the listing agreement ready by this afternoon, photos and marketing by Monday. We could have it on the market by Tuesday. Do it. And Victoria, have you told her? She'll find out. By Friday afternoon, Jennifer had come by with the paperwork. We walked through the house together while she took notes. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, original hardwood floors, updated kitchen, wrap-around porch. The house Catherine and I had built. The house Victoria had called worthless. It's a beautiful home, Jennifer said. It'll sell fast. Good. Where will you go? I haven't decided yet. Somewhere smaller, somewhere without so many memories. She squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Richard. Whatever's happening with Victoria, I'm sorry. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. By Friday evening, a for sale sign stood in my front yard. 6 feet tall, red and white, impossible to miss. Jennifer's company logo. My phone number. Price to sell. I stood at the window and looked at it. This house had been my life for 35 years. Catherine's dream. Victoria's childhood. Every room held memories, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, quiet evenings, reading on the porch. But Victoria had been right about one thing. It was just a house, wood and nails and mortgage payments. What made it a home, the love, the family, the connection that was gone? Had been gone since Catherine died, really. I'd just been too stubborn to admit it. The sign would stay up for however long it took. Days, weeks. Eventually, someone would buy it. Would move in with their own family, their own memories to make. And Victoria would drive by and see that sign and understand her father had meant what he said. There was no going back. No fixing this. No amount of apologies or tears would rebuild what she'd destroyed with 3 words. Everything you built is worthless. Well, now she could watch me dismantle it. Piece by piece. Vendor by vendor. Memory by memory. 3 weeks until October 12th. The demolition was right on schedule. Patricia Caldwell called me that Tuesday evening, the week of the wedding. I was in my office reviewing foundation documents when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Coleman. This is Patricia Caldwell, Garrett's mother. Her voice was tight, controlled. Mrs. Caldwell, I need to talk to you about what happened Saturday. Saturday, October 12th, the wedding day. I'm listening. She took a breath. There was no wedding, Mr. Coleman. I thought you should know what your daughter went through. I set my pen down and waited. I arrived at Abernethy Center at 10:30 that morning. Victoria was in her dressing room. That $18,000 dress, she looked beautiful. By 11, guests started arriving. About 40 people. We'd salvaged a small ceremony after the cancellations. My husband covered essential costs. Go on. Garrett was at the altar by 11:30. At 11:45, 15 minutes before Victoria was supposed to walk down the aisle, a man walked in. Tall, expensive suit. He looked around, spotted Garrett, and started walking toward him. What was his name? Marcus. He walked right up and said very loudly, "Garrett Caldwell, we need to talk." My hand tightened on the phone. Marcus, the name from the engagement party. Garrett went pale, but Marcus's voice carried through the whole venue. He said, "You owe me $50,000, plus interest. You've been dodging my calls for months." I could picture it. The guests frozen, the Caldwell's image shattering. My husband stood up, tried to intervene, and Marcus said, "I'm your son's creditor, the one he came to 6 months ago when he needed cash to look successful." Garrett borrowed $50,000. Yes, at a terrible interest rate. This Marcus, he's some kind of private lender. Garrett had been making minimum payments, but when the wedding expenses started piling up when you withdrew support, he stopped paying entirely. And Marcus came to collect. In the most public way possible. He had documents, loan agreements, payment records. He proved that Garrett was essentially bankrupt, that he'd been faking financial stability for months. I thought about Garrett at Stumptown Coffee, his careful words, his inability to look me in the eye. What happened to Victoria? She was standing in the doorway about to make her entrance. She heard everything, saw Garrett try to deny it, then saw Marcus pull out his phone and play a voicemail. Garrett's voice begging for more time, promising the wedding would solve everything. The wedding would solve everything, I repeated slowly. He'd been counting on money from you, told Marcus the Colemans were wealthy, that once the wedding happened, he'd have access to resources. He was counting on my money to pay his debts. I think so. And when you withdrew support, he panicked. Marcus must have decided to make an example of him. Victoria collapsed, Patricia said quietly. Right there in the doorway. Her knees gave out. She was hyperventilating, crying. We called an ambulance. They took her to OHSU. And Garrett, Patricia's voice turned cold. My son watched them load Victoria into an ambulance, and he didn't follow. He just left. The silence was heavy. I went with Victoria, Patricia said finally. I rode in the ambulance, stayed with her at the hospital. Panic attack, the doctors said. They kept her for observation. She kept asking for you. I wasn't there. No, you weren't. Mr. Coleman, I'm not calling to judge you, but she needed her father, and he wasn't there. I know. That's all you have to say. Tell her I'm sorry, but she needed to learn this lesson alone. Patricia was quiet. That's cruel. Maybe, but it's necessary. Victoria spent months chasing approval from your family, chasing status and wealth. She needed to see what happens when that foundation collapses, when the people she was trying to impress can't save her, when the man she was marrying turns out to be just as desperate as the life they were building. She loves him. She loves the idea of him, the idea of what marrying him would make her. But Garrett doesn't love her back. Not enough. And now she knows that. And you think letting her collapse alone teaches her something? I think it teaches her that she has to save herself. That no one, not me, not Garrett, not your family, can give her worth. She has to find it herself. Patricia sighed. You're a harder man than I thought, Mr. Coleman. Hardness isn't the same as cruelty, Mrs. Caldwell. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do is let someone you love face consequences alone. She's at a hotel now. My husband paid for a room. Thank you for telling me what happened. What are you going to do? Nothing. Not yet. Victoria needs time to process this. When she's ready, if she's ready, she'll reach out. And if she doesn't, then I'll know I failed. Not as a father who withdrew support, but as a parent who couldn't teach his daughter to value herself. Patricia hung up. I sat in my office and thought about Victoria in a hospital bed asking for me. About Garrett walking away while she collapsed. About Marcus collecting his debt in the cruelest way possible. I should have felt satisfaction. The wedding had imploded exactly as I'd known it would, but all I felt was tired. Tired and uncertain if I'd done the right thing. If letting Victoria fall was teaching her strength, or just breaking her spirit. Outside, the October night was cold. My house with its for sale sign was quiet. I'd demolished everything. The wedding, Victoria's trust, maybe even our relationship. Now I had to hope something better could be built from the ruins. 6 months later, I stood at Portland State University for the Katherine Coleman Foundation launch. Spring had come to Oregon cherry blossoms along campus paths, students on lawns. I stood inside the civil engineering building, a banner behind me reading, Katherine Coleman Foundation First Annual Scholarship Ceremony, looking at 50 people in the lecture hall. Daniel Fitzgerald sat in front. Robert Patterson beside him. Howard Scott near the back. Raymond Tucker sat with his wife in the third row. My late wife believed education was the greatest gift, I said into the microphone. Katherine spent 30 years teaching at Lincoln High School. She believed every student deserved a chance. Today we honor her by making that belief real. Applause rippled through the room. The Katherine Coleman Foundation will provide 5 full scholarships annually to civil engineering students. Our first recipient exemplifies everything Katherine valued: hard work, integrity, dedication to building things that matter. Please welcome Emma Tucker. Raymond's daughter walked up 18 wearing a borrowed blazer, hands shaking. Full ride to PSU. Thank you, Mr. Coleman, Emma said. My dad told me you and Mrs. Coleman were the kindest people he ever knew. He said you built things that lasted, not just buildings, but relationships, values. I promise I'll make you both proud. She was crying. So was Raymond. So was I. After the ceremony, people stayed. Daniel pulled me aside. Katherine would be proud. Robert joined us. The trust is performing perfectly. We can sustain 5 scholarships indefinitely. Howard clapped my shoulder. You look better, less haunted. It's been 6 months. Have you heard from Victoria? The question everyone wanted to ask. No, not since the wedding. The crowd dispersed. I drove home not to Lake Oswego, but to a northwest Portland apartment overlooking a park. The house had sold in 3 weeks. It was just a house. I checked my mailbox. Bills, junk mail, and one envelope with no return address, handwriting I recognized. Victoria's. I carried it upstairs, stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not asking for money. Garrett and I broke up. He left town. Marcus is still looking for him. I got a job, administrative assistant at a housing nonprofit. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work. I saw the foundation launch on the news. Mom would be so proud. I cried watching you talk about her. I'd like to volunteer for the foundation, if you'll let me. Not for the money, I know the terms of your will. I just want to help, to understand what Mom spent her life teaching. I finally get what you were trying to show me. That worth isn't about what you spend or who you impress. It's about what you build, what you leave behind. I'm sorry I had to lose everything to see what I already had. I don't know if we can fix this, but I want to try. When you're ready. Love, Victoria. I read it 3 times, then walked to my window. The park below was empty, streetlights coming on. On my bookshelf sat a photo, the only one I'd kept. Victoria at 5, sitting on Catherine's lap on our porch, both laughing. Victoria missing her 2 front teeth, Catherine's arms wrapped around her. That girl was still in there somewhere, buried under 6 months of consequences and hard lessons. But still there. The question was whether I could help her find her way back. Catherine's voice drifted through my memory. Some structures can be rebuilt, Rich. Some can't. But you don't know which until you try. I looked at Victoria's letter again, at her messy handwriting, at the word love above her signature. For the first time in 6 months, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something lighter. Hope. I didn't know if foundations could be repaired once they cracked this badly. Didn't know if trust once shattered could be rebuilt strong enough to bear weight again, but maybe it was worth trying. I put her letter in my desk drawer. Tomorrow I'd decide. Whether to call her, whether to offer her the volunteer position, whether to take the first step toward building something new from the ruins. But tonight, I'd let myself believe it was possible, that some structures with enough care and patience could be rebuilt, that damage wasn't always permanent, that even the hardest lessons could lead to second chances. I looked out at the Portland evening at city lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets. She'd probably tell me I was too hard, too unforgiving, but she'd also tell me she understood that sometimes the hardest thing a parent does is let go, let fall, let learn, and then if you're lucky, let come back. I turned off the lights, Victoria's letter safe in my desk, her words echoing. I'm sorry I had to lose everything to see what I already had. Me too, Victoria. Me too. And to you, listening to this story. Remember this, sometimes the hardest lessons don't come from enemies, but from the people we love the most. When I look back now, I don't see myself as a hero. I see a father who waited too long to speak and then spoke too harshly when the moment finally came. I thought I was teaching my daughter about value, but for a while I confused teaching with punishment. That mistake almost cost me everything. This family story wasn't really about money or weddings or status. It was about fear. My daughter was afraid she wasn't enough, afraid she didn't matter unless she proved it with luxury approval and someone else's name. And I was afraid, too afraid of losing her, afraid of confrontation, afraid of admitting that love without boundaries can still do harm. If I could speak to my younger self, I would say this: don't wait until resentment builds before you draw the line. Don't stay silent and then explode. And above all, don't believe that control is the same thing as guidance. I learned that lesson the hard way, through what many would call dad revenge, though revenge was never my goal. The truth is, dad revenge doesn't heal anyone. It only reveals what's already broken. Here's my honest opinion, and I won't soften it. Pride destroys families faster than poverty ever could. I watched my daughter chase a life that looked impressive, but felt empty, and I watched myself respond with cold logic instead of compassion. We were both wrong in our own ways. That's the uncomfortable truth of this family story. I don't regret standing my ground. I do regret not reaching for my daughter sooner, before she had to lose everything to understand her worth. Don't be like me. Don't let silence become distance. Don't let anger become strategy. I thought I was building a lesson. In reality, I was tearing down a bridge I still needed to cross. Some people call what I did dad revenge. Others call it tough love. I call it a warning. When parents turn pain into punishment, everyone bleeds. When children trade identity for approval, the cost is always higher than they expect. This family story taught me that love without grace becomes rigid, and discipline without mercy becomes cruelty. I believe God allows us to break sometimes, not to destroy us, but to strip away illusions. When everything fell apart, both my daughter and I were forced to face who we really were. That was the moment growth finally became possible. Let me be clear, dad revenge doesn't bring peace. Accountability does. Humility does. Honest conversations do. If you're listening as a parent, please hear this talk sooner. Listen longer, and never assume your child knows their worth just because you love them. If you're listening as a son or daughter, hear this too. You don't have to earn love by becoming someone else. You are already enough. Status fades, applause ends, but character follows you everywhere. Before we part, I'd truly love to hear from you. Do you think I did the right thing? Would you have handled it differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved, you consider sharing it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring stories that challenge, heal, and connect us. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. And one gentle reminder, the stories that follow may include fictionalized elements carefully crafted for reflection and education. If this kind of content isn't for you, feel free to step away and choose something that better fits your heart today.